Hello and welcome to this episode of Tripology, the only travel podcast where neither of the hosts have a permanent address. I'm Alun and I'm here with my best friend, one of the greatest travellers of all time. It's the ever eruciform Adam.
Eruciform. God, I think I've seen that word written down. Does it start with an E?
I got to be honest with you, Adam, it does start with an E, and I panicked. I didn't think of an adjective in time, so I just went with one of my favourite words. Eruciform. It means, funnily enough, possessed of the qualities of a caterpillar-like. And whilst I don't think of you necessarily as being sort of a wormy creature, I do think of you as something and someone with the potential to get yourself in a chrysalis and become something so much more beautiful than you were before. So in that sense, you are a eruciform.
Nice. Turn into a butterfly, you mean? Like sort of have a glow up. I have had a haircut, actually. You'll be pleased to know, for the first time in a very long time. It's pretty easy to go without a haircut when it costs $60 to $70.
Very difficult to get haircuts in general whilst you're travelling because you're all out of sorts. You struggle to find a barber who knows what they're doing, speaks English, and it's quite a scary experience. I often go into a barber and sort of panic, end up showing them a picture of Lionel Messi and then running out crying.
You've been told a few times that you look like Messi, haven't you?
Yeah, more than I think is allowed to not be hurtful.
No, he's a good look.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Messi, but he is someone who's known primarily for being short. And I, of course, am bang on average height.
Yeah, I think he's known primarily for being potentially the best footballer in the history of the game.
Yeah, but not tall and good at football like Ronaldo.
No, you've never thought about going into a barbershop with a picture of Ronaldo and saying, one of those, please.
Give me the Ronaldo, please. And yeah, no, because I don't want to be on a news network like Messi asks for Ronaldo.
Just trying to bring it back to travel for a second. We often get asked about industries that you can work in, job roles that facilitate travel. And I think being a barber is a bloody good one. Isn't it?
Yeah, it is a really good one. I, of course, famously took to cutting hair in our hostel in Mumbai. I had just one client, you, and I thought I did quite a good job.
I think you did a very good job. Does that reel still exist somewhere on Instagram? I think we put up.
On Instagram, there's a link in the description if you want to see me cut Adam's hair. You might have to scroll back a fair way. Part of the reason I described you as a eruciform, Adam, is because I've been thinking about the sort of chrysalis nature of travel and how it allows you to become something more than that which you first were. And I was thinking, I'm in a unique situation at the moment, mate, because I'm about to set off on another big trip. And I'm in that beautiful ensconcing vibe where you're with family. I've just had Christmas time with family, and it's hard to pull yourself away from that ensconcement and go, you know, on this day, I'm going traveling. I've got to go away. I love you, family, but, you know, I've got a mission. I'm going to go off to a new place. I think that's really, really difficult to do. And I was pondering that and thinking about it as I scrolled the Tripology email inbox. And I found an email in there that resonated with me because I dealt with some of the questions that I myself was thinking about on the time. And I think I would like you to read it. It's a place that we like to call Hostel Common Room.
Hostel Common Room. How many countries you been to, mate?
Here we are, Adam, in the Hostel Common Room. It's a space where listeners, they can go to tripologypodcast.com/Hostel Common Room, or they can send us an email, tripologypodcast@gmail.com, and we will reply, basically. Ask us any question you want. It can be a question as simple as, do you think sunglasses are an important item to travel with, or is it hard to leave all your friends and get a proper job in a bank?
Yeah, it can be either of those questions if that's something you've thought about, something you're wondering. The barrier maybe to you leaving and traveling the world, doing possibly the best thing there is to do. If you want to know how it's done, then pop us a little email into the inbox like this listener has. I'm going to read out the email now and we're going to dissect it, analyse it, go through it, answer it, and hopefully have a little bit of fun as well. So it is from a lovely listener called Justin. Justin says, "Hey, you guys post pretty much 100% of how I feel about traveling. And if I wanted to share a message with the world, I'd say what you guys say." Isn't that bloody touching, mate? That really is.
We love to hear it.
That is it's so wonderful. Justin says, I travelled abroad for 8 months last year and I got so exhausted and depressed, and it was just so hard to be gone for so long. I have a couple of questions. I am curious. What do you define as long-term travel? Is the lifestyle sustainable indefinitely? And can someone go from country to country, not see their family or friends, or have a routine and still enjoy the travel experience? Cheers, Justin.
Justin, you beautiful tripologist, thank you so much for emailing. This email hit me right in the proverbial feels because
You love it. You love it.
It resonated with me, mate, because firstly, he says that he was traveling and he was suffering from some depression and was lonely and it was hard. And I think that's something that all of us who have traveled long term can empathize with to some extent. It's so easy to look at travel as this sexy waterfall swimming with people in bikinis on boats and drinking alcohol on beaches and think, God, that's the greatest thing in the world. But of course, we are all human beings. And a lot of us travel fundamentally because we're trying to escape ourselves in some way. I think that's like an actual thing that happens that people don't talk about. The problem is with that, you are always going to be wherever you travel to. And at some point, you've got to deal with yourself. I know for the first 4 years that I was traveling, I was zipping around constantly. And in some small way, it was because I didn't know what else I would do. Like, who am I if not traveling? What would I do if I stopped traveling? Would I then have to deal with my relationship with my family? Would I then have to deal with my relationship with myself, working 9 to 5 in a rigid job? Those things scared me. And so I kept on traveling. I became a long-term traveler. And in many ways, it was only after I forced myself to deal with those things outside of the context of travel that I was able to truly and thoroughly enjoy traveling for what it was. Now I'm still a long-term traveler, but I'm traveling in a much healthier, better way because I had to take stock and deal with those other things that I was definitely running away from, cliche though it may be. So I think that's why the email got me right in the feel pipe.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I couldn't have said it better myself. You touched on loads of points there, mate. I also think that it's probably important to add that a lot of anxieties can develop whilst you're traveling as well. If you set yourself a target of being away for 6 months and after 4, or let's say maybe a better example is a year, and then after 8 months or 9 months, you're feeling really down, you'd like to go home, but you had this idea in your head that you wanted to be away for a year. Even that tiny little thing in isolation, amongst the plethora, the sea of other things you've got to deal with whilst on the road, can be something that you've got to deal with. It's like pushing yourself on to do something that ultimately isn't giving you the joy you expected it to give you.
And I think to that point, it's okay to feel anxious. What's not okay is running away from that anxiety, not dealing with it, and just plastering over it with ever escalating, more amazing experiences. Because, you know, I was anxious and had some depression issues, mental health issues whilst I was traveling. And to some extent, you can keep them at bay by going to Petra and seeing like the pyramids, and then going and seeing a safari in the Masai Mara, and then going to South America. Oh my God, there's Machu Picchu. I'm doing fine. You know, to some extent, you can paper over things by just escalating those experiences. But I think at some point, maybe it's good to look at fundamentally what's causing those anxieties and mental health issues. Justin asked what constitutes long-term travel. And I think of what constitutes long-term travel is intention. Is it your intention to go away for a finite period of time, or is your intention to travel and keep on traveling? And I think that I'm obviously a huge fan of long-term travel, the idea of going away, one-way ticket, but I do think it's somewhat dangerous. And it's dangerous for this reason. If your intention is to travel and make that your sole aim, you're traveling for travel's sake, but you're not using that space to try and further yourself, better yourself, get some skills, analyze your own mind. Like, why do I feel this way about this thing? Can I be a better person? Can I be less anxious, be less depressed, be happier? if you're not actively using travel as a medium to get to that place, then you are doing the cliche thing of running away, just traveling, escalating your experience. And I don't think that's a good thing. I think that's a dangerous thing to do. It's very, very easy to run away in the context of travel. And I think that if you commit to long-term traveling, you actually kind of need to make it a mission to use it for good within yourself.
Yeah, I think long-term travel, I mean, there's a few ways that we can probably cut it. Intention's definitely one, but it almost touches on this tourist versus backpacker or traveller type argument, this age-old debate that we've spoken about on the show before. For me, long-term travel is a nice little phrase that I like to use to describe myself and you, obviously. And it is something that to me means, you know, I've been away. It's a bit of a milestone for me, actually. Just a couple of weeks ago, mid-December, I hit my 11th year away on the road, living abroad, living in other countries. And, you know, if what we mean by long-term travel is backpacking, sort of traveling intensely, week after week, year after year, that's only not, I would love to do that, but I don't necessarily know whether that's sustainable or whether I'd even enjoy it because I just don't have the money to support that lifestyle. So I have to use things like working holiday visas or volunteer programs in order to generate a little bit more money, lay low for a few weeks or a month, even longer than that, a year in some working holiday visa cases, top the old funds back up. And I wouldn't say I see it as traveling, but living abroad maybe fits within the broader topic of travel and is now, I mean, you kind of touched on this already. It's almost become part of my identity, which again, probably forms part of the mental health thing. When I go home, I'm known as the guy who travels and lives around the world. So now if I stopped doing that, I'd almost be like, but that is you. That is part of you now. You kind of have to meet those expectations.
Yeah, and I think there's issues with that as well. I totally understand what you mean. And I, as you know, in myself, I identify so strongly with the identity of traveller that it would feel like I'd lost so much of myself if I were to cease travelling. But that's complicated because you're basically, you have this identity which is exogenous to yourself. It comes from something you do. The same way as someone who I look a little bit like, Lionel Messi, I'm sure he identifies with being a footballer, but he can't footballs forever. And when he stops doing that, you know, what will he have lost? Then he becomes a physical representation of that which he once was.
Just a short person.
Yeah, he's just
just a short person who looks a bit like you.
So, you know, when we stop traveling, or if we stop traveling, if we settle down, that will feel fundamentally like such a huge loss. I'm comparing us as travelers to Messi as a footballer. But fundamentally, that's something that you kind of have to deal with because, there will be a time where I want to stop traveling in the way that I'm traveling, or the way that I'm traveling will change. And because of that, I kind of have to identify with the things that travel has taught me to be, as opposed to the travel itself. Travel's taught me to be a more tolerant person, a more patient person, someone who's adventurous, someone who's a good friend. And those are qualities which can persist without the medium of travel. And those are the things that I'm trying to identify with more.
Yeah, I mean, just to sort of pick up on Justin's second question, which is the lifestyle sustainable indefinitely? Something I've thought about, but never maybe mentioned it on the show or even to you really, is that I guess society, we live in this society, most of us, probably a lot of people listening to the show, where it is pretty normal to reach, let's say, your late 20s or mid 30s and have a family. And then maybe a pet, and you get a house or an apartment, whatever. Things become sort of more stable, more predictable, and you stay in one location for a very long time. Even people who have been traveling tend to do that. But I've always been working towards, I didn't know the exact age, but let's say it was initially my late 20s, or then it became my mid 30s. Now I'm 36. Now it's kind of like I'm pushing it far away to my early 40s, let's say. But it's this invisible, it just doesn't exist. It's like a ceiling that I'm working towards, and it does involve getting married. It does involve having children, and they're just an idea that was almost limiting what I thought was possible. And I'm not saying that with kids you can't travel, or with a partner, or you get married. I'm not saying that you can't travel in that way with those people. Of course you can. It's absolutely possible, even with a pet if you want to. But for me, I had this ceiling, this limit, if you like. And then in my early 30s, I broke through that. And I thought to myself, but you don't know if you're going to get married, and you don't know if you're going to have children. And then all of a sudden, it felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders. And the whole world opened up again. And I thought, maybe I could just do this forever. Maybe it really is possible.
Yeah, limitations are really just a matter of perspective, aren't they? And often they're self-applied. I think that whether travel can be done indefinitely as a lifestyle really depends on the way you're doing it and your perspective about yourself and your expectations. If you have expectations of a family and a settled life, then at some point that's going to get in the way of travel. And indeed, if you have no expectations at all of yourself and you're just traveling for the sake of traveling, I think you're going to burn out pretty quick. I don't think either of those are sustainable. I think that it only becomes a sustainable option if you're traveling with intention to try and grow into something, and you're using it and you cut yourself some slack, right? There was a time, I'm going to Japan for a year in 2026, from April to April 2026 to 2027, and I'm excited about it very much. But there was a time where I would have seen that year-long visa as an irrefutable, indefinite challenge and a sentencing to, like, you will be in Japan for that year and you got to like build your life from scratch. Whereas now I'm in a place where if I don't like Japan, if I'm not having a good time there, I'll do something else. I'm no longer burdened by the need to just be traveling for traveling's sake. Now I'm more about having a good time, connecting with people, keeping my friends close, learning, having family. And I'm sure I will be in Japan for a year because I'm sure I'll love it. But it's no longer this question of like, I'm going to go for 4 years without going home once because then I've done that. And that's been a challenge that I can tell people about. It just doesn't interest me anymore. What interests me is a varied diet. And by that, I mean a combination of wonderful experiences and some comforts and close family and friends, and living as healthily with as much vitality as I can. And for me, travel is an intrinsic part of that, and that is sustainable.
Yeah, I think that kind of answers the third part of Justin's question as well then, because I'll just read it again. Can someone go from country to country, not see family and friends or have a routine, and still enjoy the travel experience? From my answer to that would be, depending on how long you're talking about, I don't know why you would. I don't know why you would do that. Me, for very personal reasons, I like to stay in one place for a long time. I like to build community. I like to have a routine. I do think that there might be certain people out there that are interested in doing that sort of thing. Maybe they have the funds to be able to do it. Maybe even if work's involved and they don't work for themselves, we are creatures that build routines or like patterns and like following them. So I don't know how many of those people exist, just constantly traveling for years on end, going from country to country without them coming up with a business idea or without them, joining a program. Or I do think that the vast majority of people would reach a point where they said to themselves, why haven't I seen my family and friends for such a long time?
It was this question that made me want to devote a whole episode of Tripology to this email, because I've been thinking about this an awful lot. And don't get me wrong, when I went away for those 4 years and I didn't see any of my friends or family for those 4 years, I was just traveling. I had a good time. I learned a lot about myself. But it wasn't sustainable, and there was issues with it because I was just going at the expense of everything else in my life. And for me, I almost wore it as a badge of honor in those 4 years, talking in hostels. And this is a little bit cringy now, but I used to be like, I don't miss home at all. I don't miss my family or friends because I'm just doing this thing, which is amazing. I'm just traveling. And I think it wasn't until I really sought to address what it was I needed as nourishment for my soul, which it turns out was close connections with family and was close connections with friends. It wasn't until I took stock, came home for a little while, invested in those relationships, got to a place where there was an intersection between best friends and family in the sense that I consider my closest friends part of my family. And now, importantly, I consider my family my closest friends. I love spending time with them. I really crave and look forward to the periods of time where I get to come home and spend time in that ensconcing family unit. That for me is as nourishing now as all the travel is. And I think getting to that place has been the single most important building block for me for long-term happiness. Getting to this place where I've just sorted out all of my relationships. And that for me was unfathomable back in 2015, where I felt like I'd got this cheat code for existence and I could just travel and that was it. And I never needed to deal with anything because there was a fascinating world out there that I could explore and be part of. That felt like gold. And it turns out that the simple things are important too. And I think really like travel has to be part of this balanced, varied lifestyle that includes surrounding yourself with people that love you and that you love. It's really, really important.
So then the situation you're in at the moment with this Japan visa, the fact you've got 12 months that you can be there for, you're going away on a trip. I'm assuming it's going to start in the next couple of weeks. Maybe you'll hit a few places along the way. Are you celebrating that connection with your family and friends and that point that you've reached for what it is for now? Or has it actually impacted how you feel about going away again for such a long time?
That's a really interesting point. Here's how I feel about it. I basically feel like if I come back once a year and spend a month where I intensely hang out and live with the people that I love most, that kind of equates to seeing them much more than most people do if they live in the same country. You know how many people, their parents live somewhere in the UK, they do a job down in London, they'll see them for a couple of hours every weekend or maybe twice a week for a cup of coffee, or even less than that. Maybe they'll see their families like once a month.
Yeah.
If I come home once a year and spend a month with my family in that unit, I think that equates to more quality time.
It's definitely what they call quality time.
Totally, man. And for me and them, that's what works. And then I'm sort of charged up and I go about my life and they go about theirs, and we call and we have tools in the modern age that allow us to stay close. I call my best friends, you included, like once a week. I speak to my family and for me that's like a great balance, and it means that I can do what I want to do in terms of travel, but while still maintaining and nourishing those connections. So there's definitely ways to do it. And my heart went out to Justin when I read this email, because I think he's kind of like dealing with a lot of the things that I was dealing with when I first started traveling. And it just takes time to figure out. And it takes time where you're not judgmental to yourself, and it's part of getting older as well. You know, I was 21 when I started traveling. I was a kid. I had all this angst. I was like, I finished university. Fuck the government. And now I feel, just far better and happier and more peaceful in a variety of aspects. And I think, Justin, I hope that this helps you to arrive at that same sort of space.
Yeah, I mean, certainly Justin mentioned that being away for 8 months abroad was difficult and it did lead to depression. It doesn't mean that you aren't destined to travel for the rest of your life in whichever capacity you want to work it into your life in. It doesn't mean you're doing it the wrong way or anything like that. There's just things that maybe need sort of looking at. And yeah, thanks ever so much for writing in. I mean, it's obviously hit a spot with us that we've been able to expand on, and hopefully it helps. And I mean, on that note, whenever you want to reach out, flick us a message on Instagram or send us another email, whatever. We're always open to talking to people like you, mate, and very, very pleased that you took the time to write in.
Absolutely, we love our community, and there's a bunch of links down in the description, or if you're listening on Spotify, something like that, you can click see more. You see a list of all the links and important things, because we are a travel community. Travelers got to stick together. together. With that in mind, I think now would be a wonderful time, because it's been a very serious, very cerebral episode of Tripology, but it wouldn't be the greatest travel show on planet Earth if we didn't hear some great travel stories. Let's listen to one from one of our listeners now. They went to tripologypodcast.com/tales of a trip and submitted 3 minutes of the greatest backpacking story that they've ever had. Let's listen to it, starting now.
Hey guys, my name's Steve. I wanted to call in with a favorite travel story of mine. Also think it's a good one for Tales of a Trip because it involves one of our very own award-winning Tripology hosts, Adam.
Oh.
So a while back, I was headed to Seoul, South Korea for the first time, and I had remembered Adam talking a bit about his own trip there on a previous Tripology episode. So I reached out to him for a couple recommendations. He was super helpful, sent me a bunch of places to go, things to try. And one story in Seoul that I remember him talking about on the Tripology episode was about his experience at this place called London Bagel Company. It's definitely a well-known place in Seoul, although it seemed that was mostly due to their marketing team and Koreans' trend-conscious culture versus the actual bagels themselves. Maybe they have great bagels. I'll probably never know. Anyways, you walk up to this London Bagel Company and you're greeted by an iPad, which requires you to enter your name, your email, and that puts you in a virtual queue. I put my name in and I'm number 60. Obviously, I'm not waiting this long for a fucking bagel. Luckily, Adam had also recommended another bagel shop, which was across town and only about a 20-minute bus ride from where I was. So I figured I'd head there and could always come back if I got an email saying I had finally been chosen to order an LBC bagel. I hop on the bus, arrive to this quiet little alley, and tucked away in the corner is this place called SF Bagels. Little storefront, couple of tables outside, and behind the counter is this sweetest Korean woman who turned out to be the owner. I tell her I found the place, how I'd bailed on London Bagel Company's hype parade, and how the host of this travel podcast, Tripology, had said her bagel was one of the best he'd ever had. Her whole face lights up with a smile ear to ear. I even pull up the episode on my phone and played the part where Adam talks about her shop. She was so excited, she wrote down the name of the podcast, the episode, said she was going to share it with all her friends and family. So yeah, just one of those simple, perfect travel moments that has really stuck with me. Little reminder of what I think travel is all about. Connecting with someone halfway around the world in this small, unexpected overlap in our lives. Felt human, genuine, honestly, way more meaningful than any bagel or tote bag from London Bagel Company could have been. No line, no iPad, no Instagram influencers. And the bagel, incredible, as was the scone. So yeah, if you're in Seoul, check out SF Bagels. And if you want to hear Adam's original story, I think it's in one of the older episodes. Part of it goes into the Patreon section. Another great reason to subscribe. Anyway, that's my story. Love the show. Keep up the great work, guys.
Oh, Steve there. Thank you so much for that beautiful, beautiful travel story. Steve, of course, I happen to know, is a member of our wonderful Patreon community over on patreon.com, and as such, had direct access to the fountain of backpacking information that is the ever eruciform Adam there, giving him a bagel tip.
Right, I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That was Steve. Thanks ever so much, mate. That's awesome. Very, very cool. Loved the voice note, the story. You're not wrong at all. The other bagels aren't worth the wait, even if it's 5 minutes. But yeah, I just I'm kind of like lost for words a little bit because it's really like touched me that even just influencing that one moment, which is something that Steve remembers as being so special. I mean, it transcends just buying a bagel in a shop, doesn't it?
Yeah.
There was so much more meaning behind it.
Well, you're very good at giving advice, I think. I, personally, I'm also a member of our Patreon community, by the way. And as such, I often message Adam and say, I'm here. What wine should I get? Oh, I'm trying to impress this girl. What should I say? Oh, I hate myself. Tell me some nice things about myself. You're very good at giving advice and, particularly about travel. And what an absolute asset to the travel community you are. And I'm so glad that you got to help Steve in that situation.
No, me too. I mean, in a really strange, and I don't think I'm even always actively thinking about this or conscious of it, but I do eat a lot of food when I go out, and usually like a lot of the same thing, so I can gauge things like quality and price and whatever. And maybe in the future, I like to fancy myself as someone who has explored a lot of the cafes and restaurants and, the iconic must-try foods in every town and city, even to the point where my partner said the other day, why don't you write about food? Like, this should be your job. It's all you talk about, all you do. I guess it's just something I really enjoy and I love sharing. So when someone says, oh, can you name a good coffee shop in Auckland? I'll say, yeah, there's 5 of them. And this is why this is good. This is why this is good. Try that sandwich in that one and, ask for that in that one. The Wi-Fi is really strong or whatever. I just love it. I mean, you did just say you're not very good at giving advice, I think.
I didn't actually. You said that just now.
No, I mean, I think it was implied because you said that I wasn't, you left a space there, meaning that maybe you don't think you are.
Yeah.
But I really do think you are, because we've just listened to 30 minutes of you give a very sort of heartfelt and intelligent response to Justin's email. So, just rounding off about Steve's message there, it's I guess it kind of, from one angle, shows you how fucking hollow some eating experiences can be. And it's not just... that can be extended into other areas of travel. If you go to something you've seen on Instagram, like a destination or whatever, or one location within a city, if there's another 1,000 people there, all with their phones out doing exactly the same thing, you're going to learn pretty quick. It ain't going to be great. So, hopefully you can sort of take note from that. The takeaway is, maybe try not to go where all the other people go, and you'll have a much better experience because of it.
And Steve, of course, did the exact right thing. If you do use a piece of advice gleaned from Tripology to improve your backpacking experience, you've got to go to Patreon and you've got to show the person that's also affected the podcast. I love that he showed that Korean woman the podcast and said, write down the name of this because it's advertising your bagels free of charge, baby. Right now, we are going to end this episode, but after the theme music, if you're listening on Patreon, there'll be an extra 15 minutes where I'm going to talk about my courageous disarming of a homeless woman on the streets of London who was being a little bit aggressive. So if you want to hear that story, head over to Patreon.
I do.
Now, though, we're going to take off and we'll see you next week.
We'll see you there. Bye.